Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here. I haven't been to the Computer History Museum, so I feel lucky to have this chance to be curious with you and learn more about what you're doing here. So yes, she's mentioned, my name's Aisha, and I'm going to talk a bit, tell you a story, but before that, I wanted to just think a little bit more about what we're doing here in terms of this program, design, code, build. So let's think about that. What does it mean, this is me, so what does it mean to design? Does anyone have any thoughts on design? Yes? Make something, decide something about how it'll look? Yes? Mm-hmm. Put your ideas out there, try to test it out. Yes. So, yeah, design is something that is a part of everything, and that's definitely part of it. I think what we do when we're in design, so I'm a designer and I'm also an entrepreneur, and as designers, we're always looking at the world around us and we're trying to figure out, we're kind of like investigators. We're constantly looking around, trying to find cues, trying to figure out who are we designing something for. So take, for example, this chair. I'm just going to point it out to you. I wonder, like, if you were designing a chair, trying to figure out what kind of questions might you ask if you're trying to figure out how to design this chair? Yes? Yes, so you're wondering, like, what's a good posture? Maybe you might also ask, who is going to sit on this chair? What color should I make this chair? How high should I make this chair? So we're in this paying attention to who we're designing for. We're also thinking to ourselves, you know, if we think about this more broadly, we're paying attention, and for me as a designer, what's allowed me to be a good designer is that I have lots of different kinds of friends from all over the place, people that are completely different to me. And so as designers, we never know when we're going to get a good idea. So we want to constantly think about, well, maybe this person looks different or, you know, wears different clothes than me, but they might have different ideas. So I've always had lots of different friends so that I can constantly get different kinds of ideas. And we're also paying, as I mentioned, attention to every detail. We're looking down, we're looking up. We're kind of walking, sort of looking for cues everywhere. So yes, then we get into coding. What do you guys know about coding? What is coding about? Yes?
Using some kind of computer language to tell someone how to do something?
Yes. So you're figuring out some kind of language, trying to figure out, tell something, you write, tell something to do something. You can also think about this. I'm going to look at this chair, for example. If I wanted to build that, we can get into how coding and sort of using this metaphorically is like a set of instructions. And now that I know who I'm designing it for, how can I actually put this together? What kind of, like, what do I put first? Do I put the legs first? Do I put the seat first? So coding and these instructions kind of fit into all parts of our life. And something to keep in mind is that sometimes we're going to make mistakes and it might not work, but we just have to be very patient. And then when you are, you become really happy because your code actually works. And then lastly, I love to just think about building as that final step of, you know, this might not look physically like this, but then you start to come up with different shapes and sizes, and what you're doing is constantly, as you're building, trying to construct things based on the ideas you had, trying to code things, and then trying out different versions, like constantly doing the cycle over and over. Design it, code it, build it, test it over and over. So that's a bit just me unpacking what you're doing here. And now I want to share a story. So this is me when I was your age. I was once also 7 years old. I think you guys are around that age. And what I wanted to share, no, how old? This is more like, 10 to 12. Yeah. Okay, well, this was a bit younger. But what happened to me, I wanted to share a story, and it's actually a story that's a little bit of, it's a secret. So hopefully I can share that with you. What I wanted to share is that there was this time in my life where I actually was afraid of things, not necessarily able to think that I could do everything or take the chances that I can take today. So what happened? Does anyone recognize what this is? Yes. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have used it, but I'm impressed that you know what it is. So my brother asked me to record his favorite cartoon on TV. And I had not really known how to do it. So you have to put this tape in, and there's a certain button you have to press. It was a new kind of machine for me. I was 7 at the time. And I did it wrong. But the thing is, when you do it wrong, it's not like today where you have the internet. The cartoon, once it's gone, it's gone. So you can't ever see it again unless they play it again on TV. So my brother was furious. He was so angry with me, and he yelled at me. And at that time, I took it very seriously. He was really angry. He said, "You made a mistake." I apologized. But really, I think at that moment, when I look, I sort of felt like he was bigger than me, and I thought, you know what, I really made a mistake, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I should stop trying to do things that I don't know how to do. So I won't take the same risks anymore. I'll only do things that I'm good at. Has anyone ever had anything like this where maybe something happened and you were scared to make a mistake? Anyone? Yeah? What's that? You have some people here have had moments where they're scared of mistakes, and that does happen, and it's really normal. So what I wanted to share is that I think that actually as girls we can be leaders. So what do you think, what does it mean to be a leader? Does anyone know what a leader is? Yes.
Means to take charge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Taking charge. Anything else? Yes?
To organize a group to accomplish.
Yeah. So maybe you're getting in, sort of organizing people, getting in front and being like, let's accomplish this, we can do this. And I also wanted to add that being a leader is about being able to find your voice, knowing what your voice is, and being able to say, you know what, I'm going to take this chance and I'm going to share my story. I know who I am. So that example for me, as I was young, I was afraid to take chances. I would have been afraid actually to get in front of this stage. And it took me a long time to get in front of a stage to talk to people because, you know, it's putting yourself out there and you don't know if you're going to do a good job. So yeah, so this is a chance for us to all be leaders. And another example to me that I really love, has anyone seen the movie Coco? Yeah. Quick synopsis, Coco goes out to, he's not allowed to sing, for anyone who hasn't seen it, he's not allowed to sing, his family won't let him And he needs to figure out what is his voice. And he's sort of quietly playing the music. And then one day he decides he really wants to go out and play the music, even though his family doesn't want him to because they're scared. And then he ends up getting to meet his ancestors in another world, and he meets his ancestors, and he's able to finally play the music. He's finally able to find his voice, and he's able to become an investigator. So by finding his voice, he went out and sort of took on that investigator hat that I was talking about as designers, and you need to sort of take that chance and not know what's going to happen, and that's what he did. So he was able to find his voice. I think, to me, if you're able to trust your voice, you're able to go out there and do things, even though maybe you don't have anyone to guide you, because he was alone. And I find that to be a very touching story for me, because when I was around 10, I was just really interested in drawing. And so I started drawing cartoon characters. I actually would draw something like Aladdin character Abu. And I proposed this for my class as our sports team. I wanted to create the mascot. So I was really excited to share this cartoon with them. And it was sort of me jumping back to figuring out what I care about. And I got in second place. It wasn't first place. But I tried really hard, and it was the start of my passion. And then this ended up becoming a lifelong passion. I ended up continuing. It's kind of dark to see that, but I ended up getting into painting and doing oil painting, acrylics, and that's a painting of a baby. So that was in high school. But I didn't have anyone who could give me any advice, because there were no other designers or artists in my family. So I ended up meeting and sort of talking to a lot of teachers, asking questions, putting on that investigator hat and being like, how do I become a designer? What do I need to do? What schools can I go to? Anyone that would talk to me, I would ask them questions about what does it mean to be creative? I really wanted to know. And so I ended up going in Canada to one of the top colleges there, that building up in the sky in the back where we would do our design work and paint in the middle of the sky, which was really fun. And yeah, that became the sort of beginning of my journey. So yeah, asking questions when you don't know the answer to something. It might not be around you, but you can definitely have that investigator hat on and figure it out. And so my journey, kind of like Miguel, kind of took me around the world. I ended up going from Toronto over to London, England, flying back, wanted to do my architectural studies. So I did that in Montreal. I ended up really loving social impact and how designers can help the world, and so I did that. I went to Jordan, to the Middle East, and did information design. And then I ended up coming to the US, and I've been here for the last 3.5 years, teaching design, running my own company, and all kinds of experiences. Wearing that investigator hat and seeing where it takes me. This is just an example of a project that was more of architectural urban design project, and then also things like web design, all kinds of different design, and that takes you into coding and building as well. And I got to meet all kinds of people here out in Mountain View. I lived at Singularity University, where we learn about technology and how to apply, where designers can actually design the future technologies and future businesses. So yeah, I want you to think to yourself, well, maybe I can't go to another world where I can meet my ancestors and like Miguel, And maybe I can't go traveling around the world alone, but what can I do today? And I want you to realize that there are two ways to look at your life. You can either see your life as, okay, I'm here, I'm actually like here, I'm ready to be part of life and play the game. These are people that are kids that are in life, sort of being involved and playing that game, being involved, sort of taking the chance, being the leader, being a designer, right? You get to craft things the way you want. But you can also say, well, I might fail, or this is too hard, or maybe I'm just going to sort of stay on the sidelines and watch other people play the game or watch other people try to create the circuit. That's one way to look at it, but what if you could say, well, I might fail, and that's okay. I'll try this again, but that might just require more effort. It's okay that it's difficult. So you can always sort of look at things two ways, right? You can say like, I'm not good at something, but you can also say, well, I'm not good at this yet, but I'm gonna learn this. Because that's you deciding like, I'm gonna ask the questions, I'm in charge here, I have a voice. So you can also, what does that look like in your daily practice? For you, you might be, what's the situation? I sort of have an example here of where you might take a chance. I'm going to give an example, which is like being in a classroom, sort of putting up your hand and saying, maybe I don't have an answer, but why don't I put my hand up? And it might be the wrong one. It might be a bad idea, but there isn't really, the silly questions that you might ask is putting yourself out there. It's putting yourself in the game. Does anyone have any other ideas? No? So yeah, I want you to realize that it's about, for you, to just imagine all the wild ideas and that you can really create any sort of magical idea that you can think of. And you can sort of craft your life and put on an investigator hat and think to yourself, what do I want to do? What do I want to become? And you can actually do that. So you can design, code, or build anything that you want for yourself and be anything that you want. That's it.
All right, we've got plenty of time for questions, so I'm sure there are plenty of questions from all of you. Go ahead and raise your hand. Madeline and myself have microphones, and we'll bring them to you.
Yes.
What are some difficulties about being an entrepreneur?
The question was,
What are some difficult things about being an entrepreneur?
well, sometimes being an entrepreneur can be challenging because there isn't really like a formula. So it's not that if I follow this step and then that step and then that step, I'll definitely be able to solve this. It's about trying to pick up new skills and doing things that I wasn't trained to do. Learning how to be good at, you have to be good at a little bit of everything. So you have to be good at accounting, or at least in the beginning until you have the ability to then hire other people. So you have to be able to sort of be able to get into so many different skills. Like, yeah, just, you might be creative, but you also have to be like an amazing team player. You have to be like able to adapt to anything, really. So that could be challenging. Yes?
Do you really enjoy entrepreneuring? Like, would you do anything beside it, or is that what you really want to do?
I So I really enjoy it, and I also like to not put all the pressure on myself to know that I have to have everything figured out now. So I know that this is what I want to do right now and for the next few years, but I don't know if that's what I want to do forever. So I like to be open to, maybe working with other people and different ways of working as well. Yes. Who else is going to be in the game and ask a question, even if you don't think it's a good one? Yes.
What are some places where you step out in your life and job and all that?
Where I step out?
Yeah, like you said, step out and take
Chance. Yeah. So what are some places in which I've taken chances? I think for me, taking chances, definitely moving to another country where I didn't really know anybody there, because obviously having the family support is a big help. So that's really stepping out for me. Sometimes not knowing, you're worried about, is this, financially, this month might not be as good as last month, and I can't, I just have to sort of take chances. And I've always just, told myself that if I put my mind to it, that I can do it. So I just, sometimes, you just have to sort of step out of your comfort zone and try. Like even for me, applying to a program at Singularity, I mentioned, they're not too far from here. And there were no other designers, not too many, one other designer in the team. And then I was in for the whole summer with 90 people from around the world who were neuroscientists and other from engineering or other programs. And I was like, how can I apply to this program? And that's when I did my research, and I asked a friend who had done the program and sort of, helped me reframe my, my thinking. And sometimes even in that moment, I had a doubt of whether I should even apply. But I then sort of built up the courage and talked to, did my research and said, well, the worst thing that could happen is I get a no. But I did, and it worked. So, but it was hard. It's like moments that, you sort of wonder whether it's going to work or not, but you just keep going. Yes. 1, 2, okay, here, you have the mic.
Do you have any good tips on being an entrepreneur?
I think not to feel like you have to do it alone, because you think that you're alone, and many people believe in you and want to help you. So sharing your mistakes or your things that you're having a hard time with people that are your mentors or advisors, they want to see you succeed, so it's okay to share what you find challenging. Yeah.
Who are your role models in life?
Oh my goodness. That one's a hard one. I think I don't have one role model. Let me think. I think I definitely, I wouldn't say there's a person, but there's definitely, I find educators and people who just stay, the teachers in my life have been role models for me, because I think because it's challenging to be a teacher, and also, they're just like very generous, and sort of being in this mode of continuous giving, I find that to be very admirable. Yeah. Yes. My favorite
Color.
color. So I really like this sort of salmon. This one's a little bit brighter, but I love that color. Anything orange. And since I was young, I've loved the color purple. So there we go. That's a very obvious palette that I'm wearing right now. Yes, you had a question.
What sort of projects did you work on?
Any, like in my life or?
In your life?
Yes, okay. So the question was, what projects have I worked on in my life? So I've worked on all kinds of projects, and that's a good question for me to think about, because the way that the world is changing with technology means that you need to have mindsets rather than necessarily one job title. So through skills that I've built, I've been able to be involved starting off in like graphic design projects where I was designing logos, but I was also like a design researcher and sort of just watching people as they were coming in and out of a hospital to see how they use this hospital to help design a better hospital. And then I worked more so in sort of journalism and using data and visualization, so infographics. But I've also been in a role where I was an advisor on more of policy work, where in the Middle East, they wanted to bring entrepreneurship and creativity into the education system. So that was more of being more of like a business and advisor, sort of sitting at the table with people who are designing your classroom curriculum. So I've done all kinds of things, and more now in like experiencing a product, an app, these kind of things. So all over the map. Yes. Yeah. What is my typical workday like? I like to design my day in the way that I feel would work best for my schedule. So I like to wake up at 4:30 or 5 a.m. And so I get up really early and get to do some exercise. My brain is the most energetic from about 5 a.m. until, let's say, like 12 or 1. Like after lunch, I'm going downhill. So I tend to do more of design work around the morning time if I can. And I also like to separate my meetings, so meetings might be later or specific days. So I don't like to mix my days that I'm making a design happen versus work, meetings. So that might be a typical day. Yes. Hi.
Your business?
What's the name of my business? It's called Simplexity. Simplexity, using design to make complex things more simple, because that's what we do as designers. Yes?
What was your favorite place that you visited?
What is my favorite place that I visited? I really liked Oman, and that's my secret. I don't like to tell people that I like it because it's like not too many people go there, so I want to keep it as a secret. But I liked it because I liked the nature there, and I liked how kind people were in the markets. Yeah, it was almost like not too many people have visited, and so they're not used to people. They're coming in and out. Yes. Yes.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food. I adapt very much to where I am living. So right now, I definitely like avocados, kale, and all things Californian. I like to try a lot of different food. Yeah. Yes?
Where and how did you start your career?
Where? So in Toronto. I grew up in Canada, and yeah, Canada. And it began because actually when I was visiting family in Kenya, I was asking my dad, this was when I was maybe like 19, asking my dad, okay, why are the roads so bad in Kenya, and why are there holes in the ground? So again, this design questioning. And so he started to tell me about how people overload the trucks, and I got really interested in how roads are designed and how people could design better signage systems. And so I started doing a lot of research on that, and that became my thesis project for my undergrad in college. And I ended up going back, and they were like, gave me a grant to go back. I did that research, and then I spoke to some wayfinding, like experience design companies in Toronto, and I became an intern so that I can learn about the industry more. And so then one thing led to another, and when I graduated, a company called me and asked me to join them. So that's how I started. Yeah. Yes. Have I learned a lot about?
Like your job by visiting other
Oh, yes. Okay. Have I learned a lot about my job from visiting other countries? Definitely, yes. That's one of the things I would definitely recommend is when you're coming up, I mentioned like in design, we like to have different friends, and that was something that the first day of school, the teacher said, hey, who felt like they never really fit into one group? And every designer put their hand up because we just like to have different groups and like go to different places. And so when I would travel, I would collect a lot of artifacts from like maps and anything that I could find, postcards. And that definitely gave me a lot of inspiration for how I wanted to design things, and got me to see how different countries look at how to communicate their message. Yeah.
I do want to ask one final question. You gave some really great words of advice to all these students about finding their voices and really being courageous. And so, what kind of advice do you want to leave them with? A lot of these students are very interested in potentially, finding entrepreneurial, cannot say the word today, entrepreneurial type opportunities. And so what kind of advice would you give them moving forward?
Mm-hmm. So my advice would be, I think my advice would be to, one, not think that you become an entrepreneur when you're an adult, and not to think that you are not ready now. Because I think sometimes we look at that as something that we'll do later. One day I'll share my story. One day I will become this. But I think that you could try to create opportunities for yourself to start today in even small increments. So if you are wanting to start a business, I know that people will start with even, the typical lemonade stand. So what's the version of that, comparing that to what you want to do? Are there ways, are you asking your parents questions about their job, what they're doing? But yeah, just thinking a little bit more about what do you like to do? What makes you really excited that when you're doing this, you just can't stop doing that? And how can you align that with thinking about how can this be something that you do over the summer or on the weekends and sell this to somebody? Why not become a business person now? Is there a drawing that you might create? Do you want to have an art gallery? Share your share your stuff with the world. Don't like hold it and sort of put it away until it's ready. Think of it as like constant testing, and you yourself are always learning, and that the more the world sees from you, the more advice you can get, the more mistakes you get, that you make like mistakes. They're really great ways for you to learn. So, and just know that like you might hear of amazing entrepreneurs out there, but those entrepreneurs, some of them have like 100 businesses, and then after hundreds of like several businesses, then they have one that's successful. So don't think that because you make a mistake or you failed once that it's like, I'm not a good entrepreneur. You can keep trying. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much. Let's all give a round of applause.